Welcome to Recovery, the Whole Enchilada, a podcast dedicated to exploring the many layers of healing and growth within the recovery community. I'm your host, Peg McDermott, along with my co-host,
Heather Hagaman.
And together, Heather and I share conversations that honor the complete recovery experience. And today's conversation is about boundaries around taking care of ourselves when someone that we care about, whether it's a partner or spouse or family member or friend, is still drinking problematically. And how do we take care of ourselves in those scenarios and also other scenarios where we're finding ourselves in drinking situations, right, Heather? So I love this topic because I know I ran into several situations, especially my early days of sobriety, where I really had to unpack where it felt safe for me to be physically. And I tried to still hang out with the friends I had been running with and drinking with. And I'd gone to a couple of parties where they were, and I wasn't drinking, but boy, did I notice the dysfunction that I had always been in the middle of, and most of the time caused it. And I thought, wow, is that what I looked like when I was drinking and acted like? And in some cases, even worse, because I would develop another personality sometimes, especially on liquor or gin. Wasn't my friend. No alcohol was my friend, but there were some that would bring out anger, and others would bring out other types of alcohol would bring out another side of me that I wasn't expressing in sobriety. So it came out in my alcoholism, in my drinking, active alcoholism.
I have to say that, the early days is kind of like an experiment, right? It feels like I conducted a lot of experiments to see what I could handle and not handle. And because I really, truly did not want to change my life at the level that was required for me to live a lifetime of sobriety. Like I was at the time I'll just do what I can do today. All I can say is, so I was kind of coached by people when I went into drinking situations where I was around people that were drinking, is to, remember that we're not gathered together to drink and get drunk, because that was my first initial reason why I gathered with people. When we're sober, right, we're gathering together to get to know each other, to have conversations, And so to keep that in mind when you're around people. Now, the thing that I had to also keep in mind is if it started to make me feel uncomfortable, and if people started to shift from what is social drinking and move over towards, we'll just call it more of a self-destructive way of drinking, where I'm calling it self-destructive. They may not, but it's definitely going in that direction. I don't have to be around that very long. I can move away from that. I can even leave. And we've talked about this before, how important it is to always have an exit plan in any situation you're in. But what if that person is living in your house? And so how do we create, and I love this because it's from Brene Brown, and I probably have quoted it before, those boundaries of steel. The most compassionate people, she says, have boundaries of steel. So how do we have compassion, but yet boundaries of steel to protect ourselves when we're in living situations with people that drink? Now, I would like to label people, take their inventory and tell them that they're alcoholics, but that just doesn't fly really well, right?
Right.
Peg? So all I can say is that people have to determine if that is their story or not. But so in my own situation here, my family, my kids now as adults, and my husband, and early on, I just said, please don't have, to my husband, who was still drinking his beer and all that, please don't drink in front of me, and please don't have it. I don't want a liquor cabinet on the counter here. I want things to be put away. We can all do that. I noticed when my brother was 1 year sober, and I know he listens to the podcast. Hi, brother. But I went to visit him, and I was concerned because in his closet off the kitchen, there's a lot of bottles of booze that he still had. And I know that his wife and family don't really drink. And I just said to him, it's not a great idea to have that on hand. And his response at that time, now he's only a year sober, was, I don't even like that. I never drank gin or never drank that. And so I won't drink it. Here's the thing. We don't know if we're not going to drink or not. And it's dangerous because it can be something that can happen and something horrible in your life where you are beyond and you can just walk in there and just pick up whatever you see and go for it. So it's kind of like you want to do prevention work around that. So that's one way of dealing with people that you live with. Did you ever have to go through that?
Yes, I did with a partner at the time, and they had a lot of sobriety, and they're one of the reasons I came into the room. But a couple of years into our relationship, she started drinking again. And it was very shocking to me at the time. And I had to navigate it with outside help because I wasn't sure how to do it. And I had at the time several years of sobriety, but I wasn't very emotionally sober. And so I had my own issues around it and feeling like she betrayed me. And today, obviously, I would look at that differently, not as a betrayal so much as a choice that they've made that has really nothing to do with me. It will affect me, but it doesn't have anything to do with me or who I am or how I've shown up in our relationship. So that was a challenge for me because it was someone that I loved and cared for very much. And at the same time, I was like, God, I want to rescue and I want to fix and I want to do what I could to help her. And none of that worked. And we know why it didn't work. That wasn't my job. But I needed to go through that experience to realize, wow, this is something I do not want in my life. And it did feel dishonest, and it felt like there was a whole other life she was living that I didn't even know about. And it was difficult for me to navigate emotionally. So that's why I needed outside help. And eventually she stopped, and that was a good thing. We didn't last, but that for lots of different reasons. But that sort of started the unraveling of the relationship.
Yeah. The thing that we begin to cultivate, and I've said this many times, is begin to have this very protective, loving experience with ourselves. And we begin to really become, and I'll speak for me, I had to become very firm and consistent. And I had to use direct action to protect my mental, my emotional, and physical well-being with people in my lives. And so that really comes down to having to really clearly communicate to people, enforcing my limits, reducing contact sometimes. I refuse to enable and detach and have to detach emotionally. Those were very hard, those two, right? I don't think I really understood enabling at first. And then I started to see more and more how I was getting more and more complacent along the way. So in the beginning, I'm very militant, protecting everything. And then as more time goes on, I'm more sober. I'm less protective. And maybe that's just part of the journey and having to reinforce again and get clear. Because then all of a sudden you're around somebody, and I did this. I don't think I've shared this here, but I was with a friend and we were on vacation and we were sitting at a bar and she was drinking, and I don't know why I did this, but I said to the bartender to give her a shot, order a shot for her. So this is a horrible example of enabling where I'm actually ordering drinks. Get her another shot,
Cheers.
And I had to get clean and share this with sponsor and people and mentors because this was not healthy behavior. And I think I was somehow trying to vicariously live through her drinking those shots of alcohol, whatever it was. Okay, so that's an obvious enabling that was not good. But there's other ways that we can enable that just and not even realize that we're doing that. For example, maybe calling in sick for somebody who's hungover. There's just different ways that we can do that. And also learning how to detach emotionally was something that I also had a hard time, especially when it was someone really close to me, because I began to think that this person was doing this to me.
Mhm.
Staying out late, not calling, not coming home, was doing this to me, when it was just, again, this wonderful drug, alcohol, that you lose focus, and people that drink, they just can't be on time. They're not awake. They're in another dimension. And we can live with that for so long until we can't. And then there comes a time, and I'm seeing this more and more. And in fact, I just saw it just recently, where a woman was sharing with me that her husband drank for 30 years and she got sober. She's been sober 9 years, and he has never changed and is still the same. And she just all of a sudden woke up and went, I'm done.
Mm.
I'm moving out. I don't even want to work on the relationship. And I don't want it to get like that. I would love to see more communication along the way,
Mhm.
and people trying to work that out, like defining what acceptable behaviors are and state your behaviors with that person without over explaining or apologizing. There's just tools we can do, that can be helpful. And so that all of a sudden you've kept your mouth shut all these years, and then you just wake up one day and walk out the door. It's not the way to do things.
Right.
Probably. But everybody's got their experience.
Exactly. And we don't know the backstory there either. Maybe she did try over and over again, and it was just not
True.
something that he was interested in doing. And we
And
can't.
upon further investigation, that was the case. So
Yes.
Just putting that out there. Yes, of course.
Right. And it's, for me, I wanted to rescue. And it's like, what's the difference between loving someone and rescuing them? In this context, for me, it's about loving them from a distance if necessary, detaching with love. So I still love them, but I'm putting me in the equation. Whereas before, and I came from a background of drinking and drug abuse. For me, it was almost normal behavior until I stopped drinking, and then I could see the behavior like a third party looking at people that were still drinking and still behaving badly. And I'd be like, this isn't God. My HP put me in situations and put people in my life to show me where I had more work to do around my own sobriety, emotionally and otherwise. And I had to learn from several friends and other relationships that I'd been in to not abandon, but detach. And there's a big difference. Now, they may feel abandoned, but that isn't my responsibility how they feel. I have to look at my motivation. And my motivation is to take care of myself. And what does that look like? Detaching. Am I detaching with bitterness and anger and resentment, or am I detaching with love and care for them and for myself? It's hugely different, and it feels different. And around that, if it means leaving, there's the grief and the guilt around having to step away, if for a time or permanently, because for whatever reason, things aren't changing. And we have to protect our sobriety at all. I mean, above everything else, relationship, everything, work, because without it, we don't really have much of a life. And I got tired of their drinking becoming my emergency. It was like coming in late or driving, and did you just drive home? And seeing that they're physically incapacitated. They should not have been driving. I did that so many times. And it's so dangerous. And anger would come out. And then it would be like, wait a second, I can't be around this. I can't. It was detrimental to my health in many ways. And my outside help and the rooms and the people that I have and love in my life that are sober helped me to see it that way. They helped me to reframe it, because I felt almost obligated to help this person and be in their lives. I felt like it was my job. And I needed really wise people to say no. It's not your job to take care of them, and it's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself and to your sobriety. And it got to the point where it's like, they've gotten drunk, that's their problem. If they call and say, I need help, then it's our problem, meaning we help them. We step in and help them if they ask for help. But if they don't want help, there's nothing we can do. Nothing. There's nothing we can do. And I remember driving to a friend's house with another friend, and we were going to do kind of an intervention, but she was not doing well. And so we had already set up, a room at some Oxford house somewhere. I don't know, but we already had the problem solved by the time we got to her house. And I actually thankfully called my sponsored mentor on the way. And I said, listen, this is what's happening. And this is what my friend and I have come up with. What do you think? And she said, have they said they actually want help? And I said, no, not exactly, but they need it. But she said, did they ask for it? And I said, I don't think so, no. She said, well, there's nothing you can do. Go, be there, support her, love her, but you can't change her if she's not asked for help. And that's why we need that wise mirror, And in many cases, my vision was getting very blurred. My decision around this friend was getting blurred because I didn't want her to die.
And you're right. You don't do this. You don't go at it alone. We can't. We need other pairs of eyes on this. And it's really good that you stopped and did that. A lot of what I've learned in the journey is to use I statements with people. And I think where I would really harm people is I would say, you've got a problem, you're an alcoholic. You're labeling them and taking their inventory instead of, okay, I don't feel safe being around you anymore. And I do not accept unacceptable behavior. And I cannot, and I'm going to ask you, what are you going to do about this? It's a really good way to start that conversation, because it's going to bring it back to, what are you going to do about this? And here's the thing. If the person's, I don't know what you're talking about. And, it tries to gaslight me or manipulate me. I mean, there's a lot of, we know the tools that people use to
we use them.
We use them to try to pull one over on you. And so I just create physical distance with the person. And like you said, stay away for a while. And, it's hard. It is so painful, especially since we've been there and we know what it takes. And we know that people die. We see people die in this. I've seen a lot of people die, horrible deaths. Of course, it triggers us to be fearful and want to save their lives. But sometimes the way we save people's lives is by walking and modeling and doing the work and being the example of healthy living to people. We were talking about drinking, and I mentioned to you that I have had to have boundaries with people that just are self-destructive. And they're not drinking, but they have other self-destructive behaviors. Anything that sends that little that feels like addiction, if it has that frequency of addiction, I can smell that a mile away. How about you, Peg? I can smell it on people. I'm not going to help change. I can't tell you what to do, but I can be very careful on how much time I spend around that. Because I just, honestly, I do not have it. I do not have the tolerance that I used to anymore. And because I feel like the time is ticking and there's so much toxic behavior out there. It cannot be close to me in friendships, nor can it be in my home anymore. I mean, things have really shifted. Like, I am adamant about living a safe life, protecting all aspects of myself, my mental, my emotional, my physical well-being at this point of my life.
Exactly. And that, Heather, is what healthy sobriety looks like. It's holistic. It's 360 degrees. It looks at everything in our lives and says, yeah, I don't drink today, and I'm not going to tolerate incongruent behavior and actions. If actions and words don't match up, that's a deal breaker for me. So it's not about just consuming substances that distort personalities. It's behavior. It's dysfunctional behavior. And I think that's the next layer of sobriety, is really getting beyond it'll always be not drinking one day at a time. And at the same time, looking at causes and conditions, what lies underneath these symptoms, and why. If, say, as an example, I have a drinking dream. It's rare, but I still get them. Or I want to withdraw, or I want to eat a pound of chocolate, or I want to do something that isn't going to serve me. I've learned to look at myself and say, what is it I don't want to look at? What is it I don't want to feel? What am I afraid of? And drinking dreams especially will show me that there's something I'm avoiding. And I absolutely 100% share about it every time they come up. And it doesn't come up often, but when they do, I share about it. And I'll pray on it, and I'll see, okay, what's that about? And what is it that you want me to know? Meaning my HP. What is it that I'm avoiding? Because that's a lot of the times I won't know. A lot of us don't know in this disease. Sometimes we just don't know what's going on underneath the surface until we start talking about it, or it comes out in weird drinking dream ways. And I've been in another program that helped me when I had people in my life that were drinking, that helped me to detach from that person and to really put the focus on me. And that helped a lot. And I know it's helped a lot of our non-alcoholic brothers and sisters too, that they have this destructive behavior in their lives and they don't know what the hell to do with it, and they're trying to fix it and control it, and it's something that can't be fixed or controlled. And thankfully, they have, as we do, a place to go and talk about it and learn to put the focus on themselves. And that's really important. Having those hard conversations with parents or siblings or friends or partners, that is a difficult thing, because I am not a confrontational person, but I had to look at it and say, this isn't a confrontation. It doesn't have to be. It's a boundary, and it's a boundary to protect my sobriety. So it's either I can't spend any more time with you, or I personally make the decision to spend less time with that person rather than cutting them out of my life. It's just smaller doses. So it doesn't have to be black or white. There can be ranges of detachment for me.
I will say this much, because I've seen this where the partner isn't, let's just say in a relationship, the partner isn't using substances, but suffers terribly from depression.
Mm-hmm.
And yet will not
Right.
quite follow through with the medication or the therapy needed. And so they're kind of doing it their way, and then become verbally abusive to the other partner. So there's this gathering of information when you're living with someone like that does require a lot of support to be able to say to that person, you cannot verbally abuse me. And I need to see that you're willing to work with professionals, and you take me off the table, because I will not live with verbal abuse like this. Of course, there's also physical abuse and all that. So any kind of abuse like that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we're talking about people need help. We need help to do these things. This is not easy to do.
And
I'm
we
just
don't
sad.
have to do it alone. We don't
No,
have
we
to
don't.
do it alone. We have so much good sobriety and health around us that we can reach out to and say, this is getting really murky for me. Can you help me unpack this?
Yes. And that's what I love, because we know now that all healing is happening with connection with other people, that we heal with healthy connections with others. And yes, I've had to do a lot of work on this. I am still not able to do it completely perfectly, but I tend now to shut my mouth when I want to tell somebody what to do. I don't do it. It's the first thing I usually will do, blurt and try to fix your problems, tell you what to do. Whereas now I just did the pause, like I talk about so much, but just like I don't do that anymore because I ask myself in my mind, did they ask for your advice? Is this property? I've repeated this here, but this is something I've got to repeat over and over again because I think we all are helpful. Our nature is to help, but we can help to the point where it doesn't help anymore. We're not helping when we're trying to fix and control and manipulate and martyr and manage and mother people, right? The 4 M's. I love my acronyms, don't I? 4 M's.
I think it comes down to really protecting our peace at all costs. Because what's the alternative, Heather? If our peace gets disrupted continually and we allow that boundary to keep getting crossed over and over again, where does that lead us? It leads us, or would lead me, back to a drink eventually. And I don't know how long that would take. I don't even want to play around with that. But I know that I don't know if I have another recovery in me. And I love my life today. And I love how my filter and how I see the world has changed. And I've seen your growth and evolution. And the boundaries that I had at 1 year is a whole lot different than the boundary I created at 10 years and a whole lot different than the boundary I've created at 30 years. It doesn't feel so onerous. It doesn't feel like I'm hurting anybody. I've looked at it like I'm loving me and in many ways loving them because it leaves them to deal with whatever it is they need to deal with on their own. And if they need help, I would be there. Absolutely. And 100% be there. And I know you would too.
And at the end of the day, I have to live with me and I have to look in the mirror and I have to ask myself, when it comes to relationships, a relationship, let's say a quote, toxic relationship, I have to ask myself, did I do everything I could to help this person or to communicate to this person what I need to feel safe, to let them know that I don't accept what they're doing, if they ask me to suggest where to go. But at the end of the day, if I do end the relationship, and I've had to end many, do I have remorse or regret from that? Or can I walk away knowing that I have done everything humanly possible and the only thing next are professionals and a higher power because I'm not going to be their higher power anymore. Because I have found that a lot of people have used me for that, to be their higher power, in a sense, that I was their mother image or their whatever. But there was there was a pattern that I saw, and I've talked about it. I think I talked about it last podcast, but it's just recognizing that everybody's got to find their own power, their own strength. And it can't be oftentimes another human being. I will carry the message, but I cannot carry the person anymore. That really is attraction, not promotion.
Exactly. And, we get here the very second we're supposed to be here. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us on this episode of Recovery the Whole Enchilada. If you connected with today's episode, please share it and like it and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Your feedback does help us shape future conversations. We do love you. Even though we don't know you, we love you. And remember that your recovery story, with all its flavors and textures and complexities, matters deeply. And until next time, stay strong and keep growing.